Alright, now we're in section 11.2. 11.2 is still on a chi-square test, but this time we're going to start looking at chi-square tests for homogeneity and chi-square tests for independence. So let's take a look at this problem, try to figure out which test we're going to use, and then execute that test. Don't do drugs. Cocaine addicts need cocaine to feel any pleasure, so perhaps giving them an antidepressant drug will help. A three-year study with 72 chronic cocaine users compared an antidepressant drug called desipramine with lithium, a standard drug to treat cocaine addiction, and a placebo. 1/3 of the subjects were randomly assigned to receive each treatment. Here are the results. Compare the distributions of relapse status for 3 treatments. And then in part B, are the differences among the 3 groups statistically significant? Give appropriate evidence to support your answer. So in part A, it says compare the distribution of relapse status for the 3 treatments. If we're comparing it for the 3 treatments, you have to remember back to when we were doing the two-way tables before. This is a conditional probability, and the condition would be the treatment. So we would have our denominator B going down, and then we're looking at relapse. So there would be 10 out of 24 for the desipramine. Then for lithium, it would be 18 out of 24. And for the placebo, it would be 20 out of 24. So we can take that and put that into our answer. Patients who used the desipramine had the lowest relapse rate of 0.417, followed by lithium of 0.75, and then the placebo of 0.833. Quite a bit difference with the desipramine. So then part B asks, are the differences among the 3 groups statistically significant? It definitely looks that way. Looking at this number is much lower than the other 2 numbers, but let's look at the numbers that go along with that. So let's look at the statistics. In order to find whether or not there is a difference, a statistically significant difference, we would do a hypothesis test. So we'll start by writing our hypotheses. There is no difference in the true proportion of cocaine addicts like these who relapse when using desipramine, lithium, or placebo, or there is a difference in the true proportion who relapse. So again, we're going to do a chi-square test for homogeneity. Our conditions are similar to the others. We still have the random condition, the 10% condition, and the large counts condition. Remember, the random condition in this case, because we were looking at an experiment, was if there was random assignment in our groups. And we have 3 groups in a randomized experiment. Then our 10% condition does not apply because due to the fact that we have this experiment where we have our randomized groups, they would already be independent. And then finally is our expected counts. Now notice I'm giving you expected counts and I'm leaving it blank for now. It's kind of a strategy, somewhat not the most honest approach to it. Our expected counts should be established before we go into it, but I'm going to show you how to do this in your calculator to save you a lot of time. So for now, let's leave that blank. Now we are going to go and do this in our calculator. From our calculator, we need to get our chi-squared value, we need to get our degrees of freedom, we need our p-value, and we still need those expected counts. So to do this in your calculator, I'm going to pull up the data so you can see that again. Now we are going to go into our calculator. You're going to press the second button, and then down here where it says matrix, let me move that so you can see me a little bit better. Right here underneath the math button where it says matrix, you want to click on that button. I'm trying to get this so you can see all of it as best as possible. Okay, then we're going to arrow to the right to edit. Now this graph that this matrix that we're looking at with our data would be a 2 by 3. It's a row by column matrix, so 2 by 3. And notice as soon as I change that, it changes with me. Now if this doesn't look like what yours looks like, then you know you did something wrong and you can always reverse them. So we have our 2 by 3 matrix, and we're going to put in the data that we had. It was 10 for the desipramine and the relapse. If I hit enter, it keeps moving to the right. So lithium is going to be 18, enter, 20, enter. Now for not relapsing, it was 14, enter, 6, enter, and 4, enter. Now that sets up our matrix. To run our test of significance, I'm going to press stat, arrow over to tests, arrow down. This time you were just looking for chi-squared test, so letter C. Hit enter on that. Now observed, I put my observed into A. For expected, it now says B. We're going to leave that as B. That means your calculator is going to tell you what your expected values are. Then arrow down to calculate, hit enter on that. We have our chi-squared value, we have our p-value, and we have our degrees of freedom. So I'm going to copy that down into my answer, and then I'm going to come back to the calculator and show you our expected count so we can make sure that condition was satisfied. Our chi-squared was 10.5. Our degrees of freedom was 2. And again, this is still our number of categories minus 1. We had dicipramine, lithium, and placebo. Those are 3 categories, so degrees of freedom of 2. And our p-value is 0.005. So you notice I already wrote my conclusion, but I still need to double check that that has been satisfied. So I'm going to come back to my calculator. Now again, you're going to press second matrix. This time arrow down to B right here on this screen and hit enter. And notice how it brings up B back on our home screen. Now hit enter again, and it's going to show you what your expected counts were. So our expected counts were 16, 16, 16, 8, 8, 8. So for our relapse, it should have been 16 across the board, and for our not relapse, it should have been 8 across the board. Now there are the formulas in the chapter that can walk you through it, but since they're not in our resource packet, I think this method helps a lot, and it helps to not forget everything that's going on. So I'm going to copy that down into my expected values because I have to show that I checked my conditions. And I say all expected counts are greater than 5. And then I'm going to have my conclusion. We have convincing evidence that there is a difference in the true proportion of cocaine addicts like these who relapse when using dicipramine, lithium, or placebo. So that would be my full write-up from our hypotheses through our conditions and finally ending with our conclusion. Now when you read this as a whole, when my test grader is reading this, they don't know that I went back in and filled that in later on. So this is just a way that I would suggest for your test because it is a time test. This will help you with your timing. And if something back there failed, hopefully you're using a pencil and you can erase all the stuff that you had done because that condition failed. I'll see you in the next video.